started using drugs at age 9.
Yeah, I read it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I did my homework.
Good job.
I don't know.
Yeah, have you let NJJA in? Or Cedars in?
Nope. Let Rico in. There we go.
What do I want to do here, Trace?
Join his computer.
Yes. And just start video. Okay. Now you should be able to let him in. And if I unmute, then he should be able to hear your mics.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Oh, do we have a new song? Still the same song? Hi, Joe.
How are you?
Hi, Joe.
Good, good. How are you?
Do I start?
Doing excellent.
Do I start?
Good. Hey, thanks for joining us today.
Do I start the recording?
My pleasure.
Hey, we're just kind of getting some things finalized here on our end with the Zoom. Give us one quick second.
Yeah.
We all good?
We're good. Hi, Joe. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be seen.
How's the weather out there in Canada?
Oh boy, I tell you, I just came back from northern Saskatchewan working with some indigenous groups up there with the Cree Nation. Minus 40 Celsius.
It was what?
Minus 40 Celsius.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
That sounds
Yeah.
brutal.
It's pretty cold. We were in a culture camp on the reserve, and the sleeping facilities were on one part of the campus, and then you had to cross this driveway. And I made the foolish southern mistake of trying to get across without a coat, and they were laughing at me so hard because you don't go outside, I was
Right.
thinking, I could just dash over there. By the
Yep.
time I got into the facility, I was jackhammering. I was like,
Well, hey, Joe, we're going to get started here with the podcast. We're going to kind of just start introducing yourself, and we'll go from there. How's that sound?
yeah.
Sounds perfect. Joe, believe it or not.
Sorry, before you hit the switch, what's the ETA like? What's our run time?
15, 20 minutes. It won't be very long, I don't think.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Excellent.
You have a hard out sometime?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Perfect. All right, Joe. Hey, Joe, this is episode 21 for us, so we're excited to get on the second half of the 20s here. But hey, Joe, we're really happy to have you today. We're Joe Roberts here, aka the Skid Row CEO. We are so excited to have him. He's going to be one of our keynote speakers at our conference in May. He's going to be on Friday, I believe. Yes, perfect. Joe, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk with you here, going to learn a little bit about you, but we don't want to learn too terribly much because we want to save everything for the conference. So, Joe, I got to tell you, I went through some of your bios and read some of your I watched some of your clips. What a tremendous story. It's just a neat thing to see and learn, and I'm excited about today's podcast.
Well, I'm excited too. I mean, I get to speak to all over the place, insurance companies and bankers, and getting an opportunity to speak to people who, really had a hand in my transformation. I often say I'm the byproduct of over 10,000 people.
Wow.
It's not like I pulled my socks up and got on with it. I'm here today because I had the support, I had access to the resources I needed when I was very vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, Joe, let's kind of dive in there. We also have, I'm sorry, Joe, we have Tammy here with us as well. She's going to chime in from time to time. But, with that, Joe, let's hear your story. Let's kind of give us a snip of kind of, what we're going to expect come May.
Well, I think that the thing I do best in a room is connect people to purpose and passion. And I just do that by simply sharing, 3 components of a lived experience story. The story into, a life of degradation and despair, substance use disorder, mental health, homelessness, youth homelessness,
Right.
interactions within the criminal justice system. Then part two is, the second chance, which I think is what everyone in the sector is trying to provide and championing, right? Is to help people get the traction they need. I got that second chance. I went back to school in less than, as I graduated with honors. That was the other thing. I
Oh,
walked
wow.
around for a lot of years thinking that I was a dumb kid, and I wasn't. As soon as I
Mm-hmm.
applied myself and stepped through that emotional uncertainty, and it turns out I was a pretty bright kid, and
Yeah.
I graduated with honors. I went out into the business community, and in less than 12 years, I was a celebrated entrepreneur.
Wow.
But I think the thing that people are really intrigued by
Mm-hmm.
and is that I left the corporate world. I really wanted to do something to speak to some of the big issues facing um, young people in both Canada and the United States. And I started to do advocacy. I started to speak out and share my story. And in 2016, 17, I did a national engagement project that saw me push a shopping cart 9,000 kilometers
Oh, wow.
across North America. And then, of course, the shopping cart is that symbol of chronic homelessness, the thing we're
Uh-huh.
trying to avoid for every young
Uh-huh.
person. So it's a pretty incredible story. I mean, who doesn't love an underdog
Right.
story?
Right.
It's the story that speaks to the work that dedicated professionals in the justice sector are engaged in every single day. And I'm one of thousands of individuals and families who are touched
Mm-hmm.
by those folks. So I think there's people they're gonna be moved. I also got a bit of a dark sense of humor, so we might have a chuckle or two.
Well, and you know what? That's perfect because this audience, the demographic that you're going to be speaking to, that's who they are. So, that's great to hear. Joe, I mean, you talk about you overcoming adversity and everything that you have been through. I when I went to your page and I was reading through it and updating myself, I was amazed of how young you were when you first got into the got into your troubles. It's been a lifetime of adventure for you, Joe, and it's been really inspiring to see.
Yeah, and it's sad that I represent a statistic
Mm-hmm.
of young people who experience similar challenges due to family conflict and early childhood trauma. And I was lucky. I had these big things happen in my life and began experimenting with drugs when I was 9.
9.
Very young.
9.
Very young.
Yeah.
Oh.
And by the time I was 15, I was getting into a world of trouble. And I often say to folks when I share my story is that the stuff that was happening at 15 wasn't what was happening at 15. The stuff that was happening at 15 happened when I was 8,
Mm-hmm.
happened when I was 7. This is what, trauma informed care is about. It's about
Mm-hmm.
understanding sort of what happened before that happened. But at 15, I was a handful at home. I was a handful at school, and I was beginning to get into trouble in my community. And it all happened really quick. And there's parts of my story where, there could have been something done. And I don't say that from a place of regret or a place of blame. Just as a pragmatic business guy, what would I have done if that was a company I was running? We would have plugged that hole. We would have done something different.
Yes,
And so
because
when I got an opportunity to speak to the issues, that's what I was most interested in talking about was what can we do so that other young people who experience these challenges get the best shot at transitioning safely into adulthood and becoming the possibility that they were intended to be, you know?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because if you put that in perspective, that's like a third or fourth grader, age 9. That's very young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Grade 3.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So Joe, what would you say was your biggest influence in turning things around? We all got to identify us and find our passion points, and what was yours?
Well, there was I mean, generally speaking, because I don't want to reveal too
Okay.
much,
Yeah,
but
great.
yeah, I had champions. I had people who spoke to my possibility when I couldn't see it, and I had access to people who never gave up on me. And that, that to me was, and the other thing is I think I was lucky. If you've ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan,
Yes.
when Tom Hanks gets to the end and he says, like, why me?
Hmm.
Often I feel that way. It's like I think it was just a combination of luck and people in my corner. And but once I began to get traction, then it changed. Then I began sort of setting goals. Your theme is accepting the challenge and moving forward.
Hmm.
Once I got that second chance, I accepted that challenge and began moving forward um, in a really concentrated way because I wanted to put distance between me and the old life. I really wanted to leave that behind. But I mean, if you look at it sort of from a systems perspective, there was people, there was access to recovery, emotional support, and deal with the trauma. I had access to education, and then after graduating, I had access to vocation. So
Hmm.
those were the pieces that were sort of
Hmm.
lined up. To be honest, if I was in the exact same community right now, I don't know if I would be as successful
Sure.
with the access to synthetic drugs, and the opioid crisis that the entire, all of North America is facing. Honestly, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Tammy, have you seen the before and after pictures of Joe?
Yes, yes. Huge difference. I mean, I wouldn't even recognize you.
Yeah, funny you say that, Tammy, because I will occasionally go down and do service work in my old community, and there's not a lot of them left, but there's a few guys that are still rattling around that I knew back in the 80s. And I have to, like, one guy, I had to show him my ID
Wow.
because I said, and my old nickname was Clydesdale. And your program's too short for that story.
I like Skid Row CEO better. So
Yeah, yeah. But I said, hey, it's Clyde. And he goes, no, it isn't. I said, yeah, it's Clyde. He said, no, it's not. And so I said, look. And I showed him the ID and he went, and we got talking and yeah.
Huh.
Joe, one of the things that inspired me after seeing some of your work online and then also reading about it is your verbiage of accountability. You could have pointed fingers over and over and over again of who to blame, but you also knew accountability of what did you need to take on to make some changes in your life. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that part part of my recovery journey has taught me that recovery from substance use and addiction is really sort of that it's a self-centered kind of thing. And so my entire early years, I cast aspersions at everyone but myself. It was easy for me to say it was this or it was that or it was the system or it was but when you accept the challenge to move forward, it's really about taking a long, hard look in the mirror and saying, okay, well, wait a minute here. Um, I failed at such a colossal level that everything was sort of burned bare, and I had to look at what's my part in this. And I believe that was a turning point for me. Had I not failed as bad as I did, I'm not sure
Sure.
I would have, if everything was, yeah, if I wasn't forced to. It's
See,
funny, J.K. Rowling's talks about this, about the asset of failure, how I literally had nowhere else to go but either into an early grave or turn and face myself in the mirror and saying, okay, bud, um, this is your mess to clean up. What are we going to do? And so, yeah, it's very, very important to take that responsibility. But I think that the conversation I would have with somebody who would be in the same boat as me is to challenge the behavior, but to support the person.
mhm.
And I had people that loved me enough where I was at to support me as a person, but challenged my behavior. And that made all the difference because I could feel judgment, a mile away. And if I feel you're coming at me with instruction that's laced in judgment, I would shrug you off and blow you off. I had no time for that. But if I felt you had my best interest at heart and you had instruction for me, that's a completely different story, right?
Definitely.
So you literally had to hit rock bottom before you're able to make those changes.
Yeah, that was my journey. However, I think that you can raise people's bottoms.
And that
You don't have to end up pushing a shop. And this is the thing. This is what the Push for Change was all about. You don't have to push a shopping cart in the downtown east side. In fact, if we waited that long, we failed.
Mm-hmm.
We failed. But by the time I was couch surfing, there were systemic failures.
Mm-hmm. And that was
right?
my question for you was going to be, you're going to be in front of 400 people that is trying to do that exact thing, ensure that kids don't get to rock bottom and try to pull them out. And I'm excited to hear how you talk with them and not only that, but let them know how they can do that better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, some of it is a mindset, and some of it is yeah, but it's seeing possibility when possibility is hard to see. See, you look at those before and after photos.
Mm-hmm.
And that photo of me before would challenge your belief on the guy sitting here having a conversation with you today.
Mm-hmm.
Probability is very low, but the possibility is yes. So every single person that we work with, the possibility of transformation is yes. It's a binary thing, you see? It's yes or no. But we get distethered from that. We get worn out. We get burnt out. And people's behavior will challenge us. And then we'll put them into that column of probability. Probability is an entirely different thing, but it's how we evaluate stuff most often. We don't use that imagination side of our brain where we're thinking and seeing and speaking possibility. The likelihood of a 49-year-old non-athlete pushing a shopping cart across Canada isn't very likely. It's not very probable, but it's possible. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's about a mindset, a leadership mindset, and seeing possibility even when it's hard to see, and speaking possibility. Right? And we also have to understand that we're responsible for 50%. Right? We do the very, very best we can, and then some of it has to become none of our business. We just kind of have to, yeah. And it sounds cold and detached, but having been around the recovery community for 32 years, I don't know who's going to make it to their 1 year or 5 years. I do my best to say what I can do or to help and support folks. Mm-hmm. And plant those seeds.
Definitely. And the thing is I'm hoping that you'll be able to give that message to our audience, because a lot of the youth that need to be hearing your message and other dynamic speakers' messages, they're not the ones sitting in the room, but the people who are working with them are sitting in that room. So it's looking at how can we convey that message effectively to those folks to get the right message to those kids so there can be more of a possibility.
I had an aha moment on the streets of Vancouver when I was at the lowest point in my life. And I won't tell the story because I'm going to share it there. So you're going to have to come, but
get there.
But it was a somewhat of a stranger who did what we need to do day in and day out, and that's to see possibility sometimes where it's hard to see, and speak possibility, because we don't know when our actions are going to have a life transforming effect. Mm-hmm. We've got to show up every day. We got to suit up every day, and we got to plant seed. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, the other thing is, one of the other things that I often say to folks that are working in the sector, or police or fire or ambulance, or people who work inside corrections or probation and parole, is that there's probably success stories you don't know about. I know I've sat in a room in Chicago. I've sat in rooms in LA and New York where there's 40, 50,000 people in recovery who all went through the system, but maybe didn't go back and say thank you. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's a lot more good than we see. Right. Sure. But we tend to have a focus on a double negative bias. We really the heartbreak stories they haunt us and live with us for a long time. You know.
Joe, what is the Push for Change Foundation?
So the Push for Change was the 9,000
Yep.
kilometer walk
Okay.
across Canada.
Yep.
And so the Push for Change Foundation today, we got a large sum of money gifted to us when we finished the walk across Canada. So it took me 17 months to walk across
Oh, my
Canada,
goodness.
and yes, I did walk through one Canadian winter. So yeah, we're a tough breed up here.
Apparently.
But today what we're involved in is youth empowerment. The biggest asset that came out of the walk
Oh, Joe, 1 second, Joe. Joe,
across the country. Yep.
we lost you here.
Oh, you did?
Okay, now we can hear
We
you
got
again.
you now. We got you back.
Can you repeat back about
Okay.
just the last couple of words there?
Sure. So the Push for Change was what we're doing today is the walk across Canada. The greatest asset was how the youth got involved. And it was what they did in the communities that we walked through, how they, raised money, they did sleep outs, they supported mental health initiatives, they supported youth at risk initiatives, they supported their local shelters and their local organizations that support youth at risk. So today, what our foundation does is we hand out grant money to groups of students throughout schools, throughout the country, to support youth empowerment projects that address one of the many, many issues that is an antecedent to youth homelessness. What we're trying to do is empower young people to, one, engage in their local community charities and resources. Two, engage and do something. And three, sort of learn something about themselves and the issues. So we're kind of inspired every year when we get the applications, what young people are doing in their communities. And we leave it kind of wide open, and they come up with these incredibly creative projects. Group in BC, we just gave $5,000 grant to a while ago. They had their mom's van, and they went around in their community, and they, as students, engaged other young people and then gifted them with things that they might need, like hygiene products and combs and toothbrushes and different things. And these people were obviously street involved. So that's a project that we really liked, and so we provided a grant. So that was a bit of a long version of who we are. But that's the legacy of the push for change is to continue to try and get students involved and young people involved.
Yeah, and I simply wanted to ask because I was interested in what it was. Obviously, you're doing some amazing work, Joe, and that's just another piece of how you're going about doing it. So, really neat. Congratulations to you for that.
Well, it's really the kids. I mean,
sure.
all I did was put a pair of sneakers on and push a contraption across the country with the kids.
That's all.
Yeah. The kids were amazing. I could go on and on and on about how, so many of them inspired us. A lot of times there's this notion that young people are disengaged. They're not, or they're apathetic. They're not. They're simply waiting for someone to invite them to something. And if you invite them to something, they show up with courage. They show up with energy. They show up with creativity. And they bring themselves and their big hearts with them, and they blow my mind every single time we give them something to do, and they pick up the torch and run with it. It's quite inspiring to see that's part of the legacy of the Push for Change.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
Well, Joe, we're at 20 minutes already. I can't believe it. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but and I have to say one thing too, Joe. I dig that blazer. That blazer you got on is
yeah, you like that?
I really do.
Yeah.
Joe,
the Governor General of Canada, give me that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
But Joe, thank you so much, Joe, for jumping on today. Like I said, we just kind of wanted to learn a little bit more who you are and hear a little snippets of your story. we're so excited to get you down in May. And have you ever been to Nebraska before, Joe?
I think I've been through, but not.
That's usually the right answer. That's usually the answer we get.
Yeah, we've been through, but I can't say as I've actually been down there to work with a group. So I'm kind of excited to put a pin in the map. And we've chatted a little bit before. I'm really thrilled and excited to get a chance. Like I say, I speak to all different kinds of groups. The underwater basket weavers in northern Vermont and whatnot. But getting an opportunity to speak to this group it's really where my heart is. And I know that folks, when they attend, they're going to come out of that room seeing the world differently. They're going to feel inspired, because I think it's the thing that we collectively are trying to accomplish together, which is a better future for every single young person. So yeah, I look forward to being there on the 5th of May.
Yep, and the Friday's a great day. It's one of those days that you have so many professionals there. They have so much stuff going through their head because they just sat through a conference, and Friday's a great way to end a great conference, and we're looking forward to having you there, Joe.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So everybody that's listening, May 3rd, 4th, and 5th, registration is open. Go ahead and jump onto our website, njja.org, and make sure you register. We're seeking sponsorships and exhibitors. So please take some time and get signed up. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and I look forward to seeing you down in, you say it Kearney?
Kearney,
Nebraska.
And please tell Maria thank you as well. She's been great to work with.
Yeah, she's a gem. She'll
She's
be with
wonderful.
me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate your time.
She's coming with you?
Yeah, she travels everywhere. Otherwise, I get into trouble.
Sounds good, Joe. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.